Everyone, I'm Allie with the Potomac Bead Company, and I'm going to show you today how to do these little presents, these little boxes for the holiday season. And these are going to be using square stitch. You can really change up what type of beads you're using. If you want to make them a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller, you can kind of do this with different beads. For this square stitch, I'm going to be using bugle beads. I'm using bugle beads in 3mm in both the opaque green color and opaque red. And then I'm using Duracoat galvanized gold 11O seed beads to give the illusion of the ribbon wrapping. To do this, I'm also using a size 10 English beading needle. And I'm using 0.006 wildfire beading thread. And because I'm using green, I'm going to be using the green color of wildfire. I have taken my thread burner and used that to get my thread off my roll. And in addition to the thread burner, I usually like to have handy a needle nose pliers because that helps me to thread the needle that I squash down on the end of the thread there so I can make it easier to thread my needle. So we're going to get going to make these presents. Again, you can make them into earrings or kind of whatever you would like. So to start, I've done 3 feet of my beading thread and threaded that onto my needle. Leaving just a 1-inch tail, I'm putting on one of my gold beads as a stop bead. To put the stop bead on, I've put my bead on, left an inch of space, taking my needle and thread and going back through the bead once, and now I'm going to do it again a second time, going from the tail towards the tip. That's a stop bead, and that'll keep my beads from falling off the end of my thread, just like I have on my package here. So I haven't finished that one off yet. Again, this is based on square stitch. You can change up your pattern that you could do red blocks and green blocks, or you could do the present all the same color. But I had that little striped pattern that I did for that one, and I'll show you how to do that striped pattern as well for this one. If you wanted to do a block pattern where you have red here and green here, or all red, you're just going to change that up for the colors as I'm describing them. So to start out, I'm going to start out with my bottom row of my colors, which is one red, one green, 2 of my golds, another green, and a red. That's going to be the size of my box that I'm making. I'm going to let them drop down next to a stop bead, and now I'm going to start with my square stitch. If you've never done square stitch before, we have another video on it as well. And square stitch basically lets everything line up nicely. So for my square stitch, I have on my red bugle as my last bead that I put on. I'm going to put on the red bugle that sits right on top of that bead, and I'm going to let it drop down next to the previous red bugle. My thread and my needle are going to come through the first red bugle of that bottom row towards the outside. When I pull tightly, that's going to force that second bugle to sit right on top. After that, I'm going to take my needle and thread back through in a circular direction through that second bugle, that second row red bugle. Next, I'm going to add a green. Let that drop down next to my bugle, my red one on row 2. I'm going to square stitch this in place, going back towards the opposite side of my green one below it. So you're always square stitching onto the same color until we get to the middle. Once I go through that, I'm going to take my thread and needle back out through my green. After that, I'm going to add 2 gold, square stitch those in place as well, taking my needle and thread, and I'm going to go away from the stop bead again towards the corner of my present, pull those beads in place, and then back through my gold beads. If you don't want the gold beads to sit out quite as much as they do on the example, you can use delicas. They're going to line up a little bit nicer with those bugles. I like that they're a tiny bit bigger because it makes it actually look like the package is wrapped. So that's why I chose to use regular seed beads. After my gold beads are on, I'm going to put on my green one. Go through the previous green, right below it. Make sure I'm not getting my tail knotted in there. Pull nice and tight. And then I'm going back through that second row green one. After I have that one in place, I'm going to do my last one, my red one. Go down through the red, just pushing that stop bead out of the way. So you're always going to pick up your bugle, then go through the previous row of the bugle, and then back through the bugle or bead that you just put on. I'm going to continue that for 2 more rows. So I'm going to have 4 rows total going through and doing that same pattern of adding a bead, going through the row below it in a circular fashion with my thread, and then back through the bead, or in the case of the seed beads, the 2 beads that I just put on. So again, I'm going to do this for another 2 rows, so that way I have 4 bugles wide, and that's going to get me then to my middle, where I'm getting ready to put the middle ribbon on. So I've gone and done my 4 rows of my package here, and what I'm going to do for the middle ribbon row is continue doing the square stitch, but in place of the bugles, I'm going to be putting 2 of my gold 11-0 seed beads. And I'm going to then sew back through the bugles and continue on my row. So I pick up 2 seed beads at a time, sew back through the previous bugle on the row below it, and back through those 2 seed beads. Back through, after adding 2, through the 2 seed beads that are there. I'm going to continue this the whole way down the line, and then the second row, I'm just going to repeat adding the 2 seed beads and square stitching them on to the 2 seed beads below it. So that way when I'm looking at the package, I have 2 rows of the gold seed beads right there in the middle. So now that I have that first row, I'm going to just square stitch on the second row. Again, 2 beads at a time. You can square stitch each bead individually if you want, but I don't really think that's necessary. That's why I'm doing 2 beads at once. So I do 2 beads at once, square stitch to the 2 beads below it, and continue on to get that second layer of the gold ribbon onto your present. Now that I have my second row of my ribbon there with the square stitch on of the gold, I'm going to go back to my pattern of the red, green, then gold beads. So again, I'm just continuing that square stitch, picking up 2 seed beads, and adding my red bugle. And then I'm going to pick up, and I have my green seed bead, my green bugle that I'm picking up, going back through the 2 gold seed beads, back through the bugle, and then when I get to the middle, I'm going to add my 2 seed beads so that my ribbon continues up the center of my present. 2 seed beads go on, and I square stitch those into place. So I'm going to continue with this pattern then once I reestablish it. And I'm going to continue with this reestablished pattern up till I have 4 rows. Again, because I have 4 rows on the bottom, and to make it look squared, I want to do 4 rows of the bugles on the top as well. So after I have this pattern and I've square stitched all these bugles into place, I am going to keep going with 3 more rows of my bugle beads. So to do the top of the present, now that I am done doing my little square stitch here to get my present design, you're going to have the same thing. They'll look really cute as a pair of earrings. What I'm going to do is get to the top of my ribbon here, and what I'm going to do is add another row of my beads on. To get there, I'm going to go back through row 2, so the second to last row. I'm going through the seed beads, or through the bugles, and at the same time, I'm also going to pick up and go through the second row of seed beads. I'm going to take my needle and thread back through those, and then I'm going to take them back through the first row, so the very last, I should say the last row of seed beads. So my thread and needle are going to be coming out of the middle here of that top of the ribbon. I'm going to sew on 2 more. I'm square stitching on 2 more of my beads, and those are going to hang out right there in the middle. After I do that, I'm going to get ready to do my ribbon. My ribbon consists of 9 beads around to get my little ribbon look there to it, my little bow. You can make it smaller, you can make it bigger, you can even make it a different color if you want. But I'm going to be doing 2 groups of 9. I'm going to be doing a group of 9. And then after I have 9 beads on, I'm sewing back through those 2 beads that I'm coming out of. And that's going to make my first little ribbon. 9 more beads on the other side. After those are on, I'm going to go back through that again and come out. So that's going to create my little bow. The way that I'm going to get the bow to sit the way that I want it to, where it sits a little bit in front of the package, is that I'm actually going to take the bow then and fold it over so it sits in front of the package a little bit. And my thread and my needle are coming out of this last row of 2 right there at the top. What I'm going to do is actually make it go back through then, not the second row, but the 3rd row down on your beads. I'm going to skip that 2nd row so it sits in front a little bit. I'm going to go through my 3rd row of my beads with my needle and then pull tight. I'm going to have to add some more thread on here, and then I'm going to pull tight, and what's going to happen then is that's going to sit right in front of my present. Once I go through that 2nd set of my beads, it's going to kind of pull the bow to the front a little bit so it sits in front. And what I do then is I'm going to add the little fringe on my bow, so little ribbon ends. Once I'm coming out of the 3rd row of seed beads there, I'm going to stitch back through my row, my middle ones that are connected to my bow there. So it's the middle of my bow. I pull tight, and it's going to make that sit right in front there. And then what I'm going to do is my little fringe that's hanging out with my bow as well. To do the fringe, I'm going to use 4 seed beads on each side. And I'm going to put 4 seed beads onto my thread. I'm then going to take my thread and needle back through the first 3 beads. And what that's going to do is create a little bit of thread on the outside of the final bead, but that's going to hold it all in place. And I'm going to pull those right up to my ribbon, right up to the bow. And that has that one there then in place, just hanging out. Going through the center of my bow again, I'm going to go through that center. And when I come out of those 2 center beads, it's getting a little tight now. You may even need sometimes to switch to a size 12 needle. I have a knot right there as well. And once you're through and you get to the other side, you're going to put your little ribbon ends on the other side. So you can use 3, you can use 4 if you want them to be different lengths. You can use 3 instead of that 4 that I used originally. So I use 3 on this side. And once I have those, I'm going to sew back through again, all but the last bead I put on. And that's going to give my little ribbon end for the bow of my present. I'm going to have my 2 present bows here that are going to sit right off of my little presents. What I'm going to do then to finish it off is just sew down, and if you can sew the whole way down. You can knot off with your bottom thread, or you can just knot off somewhere in the back of your tree, or I'm sorry, of your present. Once you're done with your little presents here, like I said, you could attach little ear wires here to one of the sides of the bows, or you could link them together to make a little present bracelet. You can link them over and over, and you can alternate them so you have one bow up, one bow down, linking them along as you go. Or what you can do that I think would be the cuter idea is take a larger seed bead, like an 8L, and you can link them together, just running your thread through the middle lines of your little ribbon here and attach them onto a bracelet that way. So you could do a whole bracelet made out of these little gift boxes. So hopefully this gives you an idea for some festive holiday jewelry, and you can, like I said, do a lot of things with it. Make a pendant, if you want to use some bigger bugles, you can also do the earrings, do the bracelet, but you can do them in a variety of shapes, colors, and seed bead sizes as well. So thanks a lot for watching. Happy holidays. If you get a chance, check us out on Facebook, and also check out our website, potomacbeads.com. Go to our locations page, and we'd love to see you at one of our physical stores. If you can't get to one of our stores to take a class or buy materials, you can check us out online at thebeadco.com. Thanks a lot for watching.